the whole cost of the building was $21 million. I'll tell you a fact that is mind-blowing to me, which includes the building and everything else. We got to finish that building. There's another wing that has to be built, so we have to raise even more money. So I was getting afraid. I mean, geez, we've raised a lot of money. Are we going to be able to raise enough money? I'm still a little nervous about that, but we're going to do it. It's on God's time, not my time, but it will get done. But a guy who was helping us with the fundraising said, well, Rich, look at it this way. How much money did you spend to get from that time you were on the stoop to now? Notice everything, all the pay, all your expenses over those, whatever it was, 14, 15 years. And the answer to that question is $87 million.
Wow.
Now, what if I called John Foley those 18 years ago or whatever it was and said, well, what do I do now? And he said, well, Rich, you're going to have to raise $87 million. Well, I would have jumped off the Lorraine Bridge. I mean, there's no way. So, you're kind of unconscious of the big stuff. I just want to accomplish the next step.
Are you sure? But with your personality, you just said that you were ready to tackle anything.
Yeah, but $87 million, you got, no, that's impossible. I mean, I would think it's impossible. That's
right.
Beyond me. But to focus on the mission, to get you in this building and see you grow, that's the mission.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick. Our tagline, one student at a time. Mm-hmm. That's how we're transforming the city.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Rich Clark series on Circulate. So excited for you guys to listen to this episode. To be honest with you, the episode was so enlightening for me. And Rich dropped so many jewels that I'm going to suggest everyone get a pen and a piece of paper and be ready to write down some of the memorable quotes and stories that Rich tells in this episode 3. A lot of lessons here when it comes to what happens when you start something and you have a mission that is beyond yourself, and how when you have that mission, the way things work out. Rich talks about in this episode some of his strengths, some of his weaknesses. This is a really great episode. Excited for you guys to listen. I'm not going to give away too many details. So without further ado, this is episode 3 of the Richard Clark series. Okay, so, I'm back home. I'm principal of Ignatius. I'm getting back into it. But I can't get this out of my mind. Mm-hmm. Later, I was at a meeting. This is years later. I was at a meeting, and I was asked to pray. And I did one of those where you kind of flip through the Bible and see what I land on. And I landed on Jeremiah. And the first line was, "You duped me, O Lord, and I allowed myself to be duped." And I'm like, wow, that's what happened to me. So I do find out much later that John Foley actually invited me to Peru because he wanted me to be involved. He didn't tell me that, but he said this kind of thing would catch him on fire, which it did. So I'm back. I didn't know what to do. So I decided to write a letter to people I know, mostly Ignatius parents or graduates that I've come to know in my, at that point, that was probably 9 years of being the principal, so I knew a lot of people. And I wrote a letter, and I basically said, look, I'm going to have a meeting. I found out about this idea for a school. I want you to come to Ignatius. I'm not cooking. I just want you to be there. And I'm going to tell you something, and I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for really anything, except if you hear this, it might change your life. And that's how I left it. And then I signed it, Viva la Revolucion, all right, and signed it away. So I would guess about, I don't know how many I sent out, maybe 100 or more letters. And I would think 50 people came. We met in what was called the library classroom. And I basically told the story of what happened to me in Peru, which, of course, I was weeping at that point. And then how this new form of school should be in Cleveland. And I need help. I need people to help me. I need people to, work with the diocese. We have to get jobs. I mean, there's a million things we have to do. Who wants to help? Well, like 20 people signed up. One of whom was Bob Mooney. Bob Mooney, either at the time or shortly before that, was the chairman of the board of St. Ignatius.
and he'd also been the chairman of the board of Cleveland Central Catholic. So he knew a lot of people, and he was overtaken by this. I mean, I'd say, he was the second follower. I mean, he followed the nutty guy and did the same dance kind of a thing. So he called a meeting, and we sat down and we talked. Another guy, Mark McCarthy, who both of these guys are still involved. Here we are 18 years later, and they're both. I just saw Mark at a meeting this morning, and Bob was there as well. So they're still involved, but this was their initial stuff. So we started talking, and I realized that we had to somehow work with this new network. There were 3 schools. There was a network office. It had like 3 people in it, John Foley and a guy named Jeff Thielman, we raised money for the first Cristo Rey School, and he was also working part-time with the network. And his job was to help people start schools. So I call up John Foley and I say, okay, I've got 20 people. What do we do?
So could you talk a little bit more about, before you get to Thielman, a little bit more about this meeting? I mean, how did it go? Was it right away? Was it just only Bob and Mark and maybe...
No, it was 50 people.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the second meeting, after that initial talk at the library?
Yeah. So that library meeting was just basically you saying the story.
It's informational.
Okay.
This is what's going to happen. I need help. Who wants to help? Sign up here. Well, 20 people signed up. And they were good people. They were lawyers and businessmen and CEOs and so forth that were really interested in this.
So now you have your list of 20 people, but you don't really know what to do with your list.
That's right. I said, so how do you start a school like this? I have no idea. Again, remember when I first had this call and I first came back, I was not thinking, really. I was just emotionally going to do this. And, I said, well, I know how to start schools, and you just get a pencil sharpener and you go.
Right.
Well, there's a little bit more than that.
So now you got your list of 20, and now you're going to Thielman.
Yeah, now we go to the network and say, what do we do? What do we have to do? And they actually gave us $50,000. All right, and that was going to pay for whatever we needed, like a secretary or somebody who was going to run this or whatever, or business cards or whatever you would need. This was what you were supposed to produce what was called a feasibility study. And that feasibility study in those days was fairly simple. You had to have 25 signed commitments for a job from businesses. So you'd go into a business and basically, here's what we're thinking about doing. Would you hire these kids? The original price was $22,000. And this is not a commitment to actually do it, but would you seriously consider it? Yes. So we had to get 25 of those. That sounds easy, but it was not. We had to find a place, a building. We had to get the approval of the local ordinary or the bishop. And all of these things kind of piled up. I'm like, oh, my God, we got to do some stuff. So I think I'd mentioned calling up Sister Caroline Smith. There was and we had to have a sponsor. We had to have either a religious order or the diocese would have to sponsor us. So,
which we talked about in episode 1, which eventually was the Jesuits and the Sisters.
We thought it was the Jesuits, then it was the Sisters of Amelia, we thought it was the bishop. It ended up being a lay-owned school endorsed by the Jesuits and the Amelia Mary. So it was beginning to become a job in a sense that you got to do all this. You had to get data, like were there enough kids? Was there enough poverty? Was there, all the things that you would need to sort of a market study. And how would you afford it? How would you get the money? So we really at the beginning it was you'd have to raise $500,000, $600,000. The network had just received a grant from the Gates, so they'd give you another $600,000. Then Mr. Casson would give you more money, and we had to get up to $1.8 million.
And you figured that out through the study.
Yes, and we got commitments from people to give us the money. The Jesuits and the Amelia Mary gave us a good chunk of that. All right, so there we are. So along comes Jeff Thielman, who I had met once before. He's from Boston. He was a single guy at the time. He had volunteered in Peru, again, for 2 years. Of course, Peru has to get into this. He'd come back, worked for Foley. B.J. Casson, remember he went and B.J. Casson gave him that check. I think I told you that story earlier, that he met B.J. Casson, which later was a very good meeting. So anyway, he comes to Cleveland, and we hit it off right away. He's a likable guy. I like him. We have fun. He meets with Mooney. Mooney's a good guy. McCarthy, and we're ready to go. So what do we got to do? Well, you really got to get some community support for this. So you should have some community meetings. I'm like, okay. So I found a place, Our Lady of Mount Carmel West, which is on Detroit, about 70th and Detroit, on the near west side. They have a basement. And I said, can we use your basement? We have a community meeting. And I invited everybody. I told everybody to invite everybody. I mean, it was just, here comes everybody was the idea. And we had a room, maybe 150 people came. These were strangers now. I mean, these weren't people I knew. And Jeff Thielen and I, this was the early days of PowerPoint. So we made a PowerPoint, okay, which was really cool. And we explained how Cristo Rey School works. And the jobs, and that there's one in Chicago, and one in Denver, and one in Portland, and that this would be another one. So we give the PowerPoints, well done, I think, and people are listening, and we actually made spaghetti. We had a spaghetti dinner beforehand just to warm up the people. So we finished the presentation. We say, any questions? I still remember this. It was a Latina woman who ran a not-for-profit, who will remain nameless right now, but she got up and said, why is it that Latino children have to work so they can go to school? No, that's not it. Jeff Thielen was trying to explain, no, it's a good thing to work. You get experience, you learn things. She wasn't buying it at all. Then two people who I knew, and I thought they were there to support us, and they were very prominent people in the Catholic education world, stood up and said, why are you destroying Central Catholic High School? We're like, we're not destroying Central Catholic High School.
Oh, my God.
Right? So it's like the first two reactions are totally negative. Okay. So Jeff, who'd been at these meetings before where similar things came up.
Thank God he was there, huh?
Yes, amen for Jeff. Jeff ended up starting 14 schools.
Wow.
That's incredible. He doesn't get, he should have more credit than he gets. So he covers those questions. The third one was, this is a great idea. And then all heck broke loose. I mean, everybody started talking positively. It was exciting. Where can we sign up? Can my kid go there? It's like, this is like 2 months into it. So, but we knew we had hit a nerve. We knew that there was a real need in the community for this, and that people saw it and were anxious for it to happen. So Jeff and I were giddy. I mean, it was so great. It was so high for the meeting. It was just fantastic. So we decided that we should go out for a drink. So we went to the Velvet Tango Room, which Jeff had never been to, and I think I'd been to once before. It's a fancy cocktail place on the Near West Side. And we couldn't stop talking about it, how great it was. It was about 10:30 at night. So let's call Foley. 10:30 at night. So we do. And he's like, hello. And we tell him how great. He's like, oh, that's great, guys. Call me tomorrow.
Right.
Enough of this. But that really gave me the energy to realize, okay, there's a need. This isn't just Rich Clark talking. This is like people are saying, when can I send my kid there? Mm-hmm. Which is pretty amazing. So that was the very first meeting in the city about Cristo Rey. And it was still called it was going to be called Cristo Rey, so we used that term a lot. We also used the Casson Educational Initiative Fund. That was his money that he was giving, so it was CEIF. So he used to sometimes be known as, I still have a shirt which has the new CEIF school. All right. Wow. That's not a very catchy name. It didn't catch on, but that's what happened. So we began to do the feasibility study in earnest. We hired a Humility of Mary nun named Sister Madeline Shimo, and she did sort of focus groups with parents in local areas to find out, like after church, she'd stop and say, would you go to this school? Would you consider doing this? She went out and talked to some businesses, and they said, asking them would they sign these letters and so forth. So gradually we're making progress. And then we have, at this point, the first national meeting of the Cristo Rey Network, okay? Now, we do not have a school. And there are a couple other schools. New York was one of them, and we were one of them. And I think I can't remember another school, but then there was Portland, Denver, and Chicago, and Austin, which was also starting. So we went to Chicago. We met at the Cristo Rey School there, and we stayed at oh God, what was it called? I don't know. It was on the north side. It was a very nice hotel, paid for by Mr. Casson. And I went down to the dining area, and I was waiting for a table, so I was sitting at a bar, and there was this old guy sitting there. I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" He said, "Are you here for the meeting?" I'm like, "What meeting? The Cristo Rey meeting?" I said, "Yeah, I'm B.J. Casson." I was like,
wow.
Oh my God, this is the guy. The guy who just gave $22 million. He's like a normal, nondescript guy sitting having a soda. He wasn't even drinking. So we hit it off too right away. He was a very, very engaging guy. He was a salesman by his trade, and he was very good at that. So, and he wanted people to join. So he wasn't asking me hardball questions. He was trying to find out how excited I was and so forth. So we hit it off. It was great. We had our national meeting. We met in a classroom. I met a guy named Matt Powell, who was the first president of the Portland School, who I to this day am very, very close to. A guy named Bill Ford, who is now and has been since the beginning of the New York school, the principal of that school. He's been there for as long as I've been here. And it was like, this is really happening now.
Wow.
Now there's like 6 or 7 possibilities out there. There's 3 that are really having schools. The Portland school was maybe 2 years old. They didn't have juniors. I mean, they were just freshmen, sophomores. And I remember at the meeting they had a session. It was called Lessons Learned, and it was the first presidents talking about all the mistakes they made. Well, we had this. We didn't have a social for the entire first year, and the kids left school. They didn't want to. This is no fun. I don't want to come to this school.
Right.
There's no dances, no nothing. Like, oh God, we forgot about that. So, a lot of those early lessons helped us.
Right, because you avoided them. Right?
Totally avoided them right away. But it was so cool that they were so honest about it. Lessons learned. Here's what I did. As dopey as it sounds, this is what we did.
We had no dances.
We had no dances. It was tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. So, we went on with this study, and we prepared a document. That's what we were supposed to do. And then we were going to present it at the next national meeting, which was a year later. So this is now, what are we at, about 2002 maybe.
Okay.
And we'd hear whether they accept us. That doesn't mean we start the school, but it just means, yes, you can begin planning to start a school. All right? So we still didn't have a place. The sponsorship at that time was the Humility of Mary they were going to be the sponsor, so that was good. We did all the data. Cleveland, turns out, has some people that don't have a lot of money. I know it's hard to believe, but plenty of it. The school system at that time was horrendous. I think their graduation rate in 2002 was 33%. Now, what that actually meant was that of the seniors starting senior year, 33% graduated.
Not even counting the ones that
they don't count the ones
beforehand.
from freshman to senior.
Oh my gosh!
It was horrible. So there was a great need. There was a real great need. There still is a great need, but it's Cleveland's now up to about 64%. Again, that's 2/3 of the seniors who graduate. 1/3 don't. Mm-hmm. That doesn't count the cohort, which is from freshman year to senior year. They don't talk about that number, and I don't know what it is. Right. I think they do, but it's probably embarrassing.
Right.
It's certainly not a good number to broadcast.
Right.
So they keep raising up that graduation rate, which, God bless them, that's a good thing to do. But we've always had at our school 100% graduation rate. Mm-hmm. So, but that's nothing to brag about, it seems to me. If you're starting as a senior year, you should graduate.
Right.
Okay. Now, there are kids that leave on their own because they moved out of town and so forth.
Right.
But it's not like the kid gets to the end of senior year and he can't pass the graduation test. Mm-hmm. That's not the case, which is good. So as we got closer and closer to this, we realized the place was going to be very important, where we're going to go. And there was a school. Well, it used to be Central Catholic on the west side. Central Catholic had a couple of campuses. They now just have the one on Broadway there. But they had one on, I think it's on Scranton, like around 25th or 6th Street. It was in St. Michael's Parish. big old school building with like gargoyles and, from the 20s or something. And they had school there, but then they combined all their schools to the campus on Broadway, and that school was sitting there. It was a high school, all done, ready to go, and owned by a parish. Had a gym, cafeteria. They had cabling, albeit not so good, but they had internet and so forth. So it was pretty attractive. So we met with the pastor, and the pastor said, well, yeah, I'm trying to sell this. I said, well, how much is it? And he said, $2 million. I'm like, $2 million? At that point, I didn't think we'd ever see $2 million. I don't have $2 million. There's no way can we rent it? No, I'm going to sell. Well, how did you come to that price? And he basically said, this is what he said, I'm not making it up. He said, because that's what we need. I said, well, okay, but there's real estate pricing is not because that's what you need. It's what is it worth on the market. So it didn't work out. Unfortunately, I was really kind of down about that. At that time, my son Kevin was a freshman at St. Ignatius, and he was on the freshman basketball team. And so when you go to a freshman basketball team game, it's basically the parents of the freshmen watching the players and maybe their girlfriends. Okay, so I'm sitting next to this guy. And who are you? His name is Tom Loby. I'm Rich Clark. And Cristo Rey. He said, that Cristo Rey thing, I think I have a building for you. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the one in Chicago, like he knew about it. The one in Chicago is in an old Slovenian parish. I said, really? Yeah, St. Stephen's. And they closed that parish, and then they gave the building to the Cristo Rey School. I'm a member of a Slovenian parish here in Cleveland, and we're thinking about not closing the parish, but closing our school. And it's a great old building. It's by brick. It's got a big auditorium. I'm like, really? So I said, well, when can I see it? He said, what are you doing tomorrow? So he was on the finance committee of the parish, and I think he was. They were looking to rent it. They weren't looking to sell it. So we came here, and again, when you have no school, a school like St. Vitus, which has classrooms already done. There's a big auditorium. It's terrazzo floor. It's not a great gym, but it is a gym. It's got a stage for full fly. It's got a lot of things going for it. And it's not falling apart. So we met with the pastor, Mooney and I, weeks later, maybe in February, and agreed that we would rent this place. Now, this was in early 2003, so February. Mm-hmm. It was snowy out, I remember that. And we come to an agreement, and then we say, well, we really don't need it as a school until 2004 because we weren't going to open in 2003. And he said, well, I think we'll just close the school this June of 2003. And I said, well, you don't have to. No, we want to. The school's it's losing money, and it's hard to do. And, you need this place. You'll need to fix it up. And I'm okay, I don't want to, close your school on you. But he did. He actually, in February, they announced no more St. Vitus grade school. And I moved in here in July 7th of 2003 to an empty, building that you saw, the early St. Martin. And we had done work on it before you saw it. So you're like, really? So we walk in. Every room has black slate blackboards on every wall. I come to find out that there's a cloakroom next to each class. And there are 50 hooks in the cloakroom, meaning they had 50 kids in each class. All right, little grade schoolers. And they all had to write their little lessons on the blackboard that was all over the room. And we saved one of those rooms up in the third floor of our building. My daughter had the idea. So you should save one of these. It's historic. So we do. We still have. There's slate. We took some of it down, but there's slate blackboards. We raised the ceiling like they used to be. Put a flag. It looks like a 1922 grade school room, which we used to have our reading room in there. That's where you guys would sleep, I think, on the couches. So we get to school in July. I'm leaving St. Ignatius now for sure. I've had my conversation with Ron Trzynski, and it's clear that I'm making this choice. I went through the interview process. Thank God they hired me. I think I said that. And then I came over here. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget it. It had to be 110 degrees. It was in July 7th. So I come into the building. There's no air conditioning. It's 2-foot thick brick walls, all right, that have been baking in the sun for a month, all right, with no activity in the building. All the windows were closed and everything. I was like walking into an oven. So I walked into the office, which is now the principal's office, but I walked in there, and that was the office. And I sat down at the desk. It was so hot that I just started sweating profusely from the heat. I wasn't moving. I wasn't working. And I was just sweating. I said, I can't take this. I can't stand the heat anyway, so I don't like it. So I go outside, and I sit on those the old steps there that are worn out from grade school kids going up and down there for 100 years. And I sit down there, and I start feeling sorry for myself because I'm like, what have I done? I just left Xanadu across the river here with the air conditioning, 3 assistants, unlimited, whatever I wanted, turn it up, make it colder, make copies for me, all that stuff. It's just me now. And it's so hot I can't even go in the building. So wow. I sit down on the step and I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? This is where you dupe me and I let myself get duped really came into play. So I figured, well, I'll call Foley. I said, I don't know what to do. I really don't. They knew how to get this far, but as far as then starting the school, that wasn't in the playbook yet. It was kind of sketchy what you do after that. So I called him up, and I said, John, this is Rich. I've done what you've said, and here I am sitting on the street on Laushi. I didn't even know what Laushi was at the time. And turns out he was America's greatest Slovenian. He was a mayor, senator, and governor of Ohio. So he's a great man. They named a federal building after him downtown. But I didn't know that then. So I'm sitting there and I say, John, what do I do now? I don't know what to do. I'm kind of perplexed. He says, Rich, it's a great mission. Great people will come. Okay, thank you. So I go back in and I call up Mooney. We got to have a meeting. We got to decide how we're going to get jobs. What do we do next? We got to get a budget, all this kind of stuff. So I'm sitting there, and he said, well, I want to bring a friend of mine over tomorrow. Mike Gall is his name. So I said, sure. So Mike Gall comes over, and it's still 110 degrees in the office. It's brutal. I got the windows wide open. It's still hot. Mike goes, whoa, it's really hot in here. I said, yes, it is, Mike. There's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I didn't even have a fan. So I thought, this is ridiculous. So Bob and I meet for a while, and then we go to a diner. We go to the diner on 55th Street because it's cool, and we start planning there. About 3 o'clock, I'm back in my office, and we had a doorbell at the front door of St. Vitus, of the grade school, and it rang. I went down there. It was Mike Gall, and he was carrying a window air conditioner.
Oh, thank God.
I'm like, oh, you are the man. So he put it in the window. I closed it out. And I said, you know what? John Foley told me this would happen. It's a great mission. Great people will come. But that was the first gift to St. Martin was a window air conditioner. They had up in his attic. I felt so sorry for you. We had to do something. So, but things like that happened over and over again as we started. And there is something to that. It's a great mission. Great people will come. Because, I go into these... I went into Forest City at 8 o'clock in the morning to see this guy named Alan Krulak. And he was like the vice president of community affairs. And Councilman Simperman at the time, he was the councilman for this ward, got us a meeting. Mm-hmm. So Tom Bennett, we had hired Tom Bennett, and that's another story I could tell you. But we hired Tom Bennett, and he and I went down to this office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we had with us a VHS tape of the Cristo Rey story on 60 Minutes. And we were going to show it to him. One problem. They didn't have VHS players. They had CD players. So we're like, oh, no. Okay, well, we can't show you the film. So Alan Krulak is in this little small office. I mean, he's a very unassuming guy. And he says, so we start talking right away. We're going to give him the pitch. He says, wait a minute. And he looks at me and says, weren't you the principal of St. Ignatius? I said, yeah. Well, why are you doing this? So I'm like, okay, do I tell them the Peru story and I
Right.
was called by God, or do I just say, because I think it's a good idea, whatever? And I said, I'm going to tell them what happened. So I tell him, I said, I had this experience in Peru. I think it was God, but it changed my life, and I've got to do this. And he immediately says, well, that's not a bad reason. I'm like, oh, okay, good answer. And then Tom Bennett had a similar situation where his wife finds the ad, and, he gets called and so he says, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll take 2 jobs. Well, no, Mr. Krulak, that means 8 kids. I know what it means. We'll take 2 jobs. We didn't even sell them. He just said, I'll take 2 jobs. I love you guys. So, it taught me something. People aren't going to give to an idea. They want to see it embodied somehow. So somebody has to have some passion for it. Somebody has to care. Who am I giving my money to? It's not just a thing. It's people. Mm-hmm. And there were only 2 employees at the time, and he liked both of them. So, that was a good sign that, wow, this is pretty. And then what he did is he introduced us to everybody else in Cleveland.
Wow.
So we started meeting CEOs instead of HR directors. And all of a sudden, we had our 25 jobs in a couple of months.
Just from that one meeting?
Yes. Now, we had to have more than 25 meetings to get the jobs. But, I met a guy, a teacher at St. Ignatius, John Cooney. He was a basketball coach and a biology teacher, great teacher. And a good coach. If he's listening, I don't want to say he was a bad coach. He was a good coach, but a really great teacher. He was sitting at the bar. I was having dinner at the Parkview, at 58th in Detroit, north of there. And he was sitting at the bar with somebody else, and they were watching the NCAA tournament and it was Xavier. And John Cooney went to Xavier. Mm-hmm. So he was watching that. And he sees me. He says, Rich, come over and tell this guy about what you're doing. Well, that guy was a guy named Dr. Boudic, who was in charge of a department at the Cleveland Clinic. And he said, that's a fantastic idea. We'll take a job. Right there was just like
right
that.
There.
We'll
He's like,
like, really? And he said, by the way, don't send me, if these 4 kids, if one of them doesn't work out, I don't want to do this. I want to have this be real. I want it to be real kids that need to work and need to understand how to work. And I don't want to just have your best people. I want to have the kids that you're taking. I'm like, wow, that's a great offer.
Wow.
Because we got plenty of those. So, and that was our entree into the clinic. At one time, the clinic had over 10 jobs. That's 40 kids working at the clinic because of that random meeting. And that's how these things kind of worked. So, I go back to what Foley said. It's a great mission. Great people will come.
It's almost like I misnamed the first one. This one should be if you build it.
Yeah, well, it's all like that.
It's all the same thing.
It's all the same thing, really. I go back to that duping because you got to remember this. I went to Peru because I was going with my friend Foley, and I was going because it would be a fun time. I wasn't going there because I'm a holy guy or I want to do something great for humanity. That wasn't why I was going. It was, and I take that as, and I look at Scripture, and I taught Scripture for a long time, so I think I understand part of it. But in Scripture, you look at the people that God calls, and He doesn't call the people you think He'd call. There's a great story about David being called. He was kind of the run of the litter. He was a little kid. Why David? And the line is, men look at the outside, God looks at the heart. All right, so, that's kind of an interesting thing. The other thing is this. Our weaknesses are strengths in God's hand. And by that I mean, think of what I was doing in that meeting back in Peru when I was frustrated with the guy going, and I said, for the love of God, I was being a wise ass. Mm-hmm. All right, and that's who I am. That's a weakness. It's not good to be a wise ass all the time. And I sometimes, people at the meetings, come on, Rich, get serious. But that's a weakness I have. Mm-hmm. What happens? He uses that weakness. Okay, why don't you? It just goes right back at me. So, some of the weaknesses that I have, like I'm very competitive. That's not good. But I'm very, very competitive. I want to win. I want to get it done. Mm-hmm. Well, going for 4 years to get 100 kids in the building, that takes some grit and competition. I'm not giving up. I'm not going to give up. I don't give up easy. But that's also not a strength sometimes. That can be a bad thing. It's over. Give up. You're stupid.
Why are you still arguing sometimes?
And the other thing is, I think I don't think anything's. I think I can do anything sometimes, and that's not good either. But here it is. I talking to Mike Knack that day when he thought he was drunk on Sunday morning. We're going to start a school. Come on, we got to. Well, Rich, you got to talk to the bishop. Why? I mean, I was just like, I could do this. Well, that's bad. That's good to have that kind of thought in yourself all the time. That I can do anything. No, but God, if there is a choice here, if God somehow, again, I go back to what my wife said. The calls,
fate will have it.
The call's always there.
Right.
So why I listen? Because it played to my weaknesses, not my strengths. Now, as I get older, I think my strength of like storytelling has certainly helped. So it's not like all my weaknesses, but getting me involved right away, it played to all my weaknesses. Played to every temptation. I'm going to do it. I'll be the best. I'm the greatest. I mean, I'm being open and honest.
Right.
That's somehow I think. And the impatience, I'm so impatient. I took a personality test one time, and the result was that there are only 2% more people on the planet that are less patient than I am. Okay?
Did you take the
PI?
Okay.
That's what I took.
Okay, yeah.
I have taken the success. What is it called? Strength Finders.
Yeah.
But that's all strengths. That's not weaknesses. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But I think that's so important to the story. It's anybody can get involved here. You take Mickey to Mope, and somehow it's going to work out because they're going to work. Mike Gall has an old air conditioner in his attic. I never thought of anything. It was going to be scrap. I'm going to give it to that guy. He immediately got into this.
Do you think each little milestone added to your feeling of, I can do this? Like, because one of the things that's funny is me starting Circulate, me now seeing a website and seeing this is like, I got a little boost of like, I can do this. Like, I can, I want to make sure Circulate runs properly, but I can do something else too by learning the first thing of like going from concept to, okay, now it's out there.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, you have to have I think they said it about entrepreneurs in general, that you have a strong sense of self and you believe you can do it. It's the Jim Collins book again about, face the brutal facts, but with the mission and the belief that you will accomplish your mission. But you got to face the facts. But those facts aren't going to overcome you, I guess. Okay, I get that.
Right.
So, I can remember the first, we just finished a building over here, all right? And the whole cost of the building was $21 million. I'll tell you a fact that is mind-blowing to me, which includes the building and everything else. We got to finish that building. There's another wing that has to be built. So we have to raise even more money. So I was getting afraid. We've raised a lot of money. Are we going to be able to raise enough money? I'm still a little nervous about that, but we're going to do it. It's on God's time, not my time, but it will get done. But a guy who was helping us with the fundraising said, well, Rich, look at it this way. How much money did you spend to get from that time you were on the stoop to now? Everything, all the pay, all your expenses over those, whatever it was, 14, 15 years. And the answer to that question is $87 million.
Wow.
Now, what if I called John Foley those 18 years ago or whatever it was and said, well, what do I do now? And he said, well, Rich, you're going to have to raise $87 million. I would have jumped off the Lorraine Bridge. There's no way. So, you're kind of unconscious of the big stuff. I just want to accomplish the next step.
Are you sure? But with your personality, you just said that you were ready to tackle anything.
Yeah, but $87 million, that's impossible. I would think it's impossible. That's beyond me. But to focus on the mission, to get you in this building and see you grow, that's the mission.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick. Our tagline, one student at a time. That's how we're transforming the city. Now, you and I are getting involved a little bit in housing in the neighborhood. That's transforming the city. Well, if you told me when I'm on the stoop, by the way, Rich, you got to fix the neighborhood too. I'd say you're crazy. But this grows. It's organic. it just grows. And as more people get involved, they have ideas. So it's not Rich Clark's idea anymore. It's a conglomeration of people that are moving this forward. Students, alums are all now a part of this. That's why Foley called it a long time ago, and I always say this. It's the Cristo Rey movement. It's not a thing. It's a movement. It's gaining people together to focus on these horrible issues we have in the cities. We have to do something about this. If we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
So, but we can't accomplish everything. That's that step along the way prayer. But I can accomplish something, and I can do it very well. Well, I think that's what we've done so far. But let's start. We're not done. It's not, okay, buildings built. Whew, that's the end of this. No, it's really the beginning. So when I look at that building, I say we got to raise even more money. It'll come. People see this. When people walk into this building and see our kids and see a capstone presentation like we were doing today, I mean, there's no one that's ever come here that said this is a dumb idea. Okay?
Right.
Everybody sees it. And if they have the capacity to help with money, they help. It's been amazing the amount of people that have given significant money to this place because they believe in you, the student. They believe in me, the person working here, and everybody else.
Right.
You know, but it's a really, I think in a way, humbling. So that's not one of my strengths, by the way, being humble. But it is humbling. So at first you think you can do everything. Now I realize I can't. This is beyond me. But I can lead a movement. I can get people excited by it. And then they can do it.
Right.
You know, I'm kind of done doing it, but they can do it.
Right.
If they just hear the story and they hear the passion, they're going to get involved in this. And that's what's happening.
All right. So then I guess we'll wrap up this episode there, and then we'll keep talking about, the early stages and kind of explain brick by brick what happened. So.
Yeah, it is brick by brick.
For sure. All right. Thanks. This is episode 3 with Rich Clark, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please feel free to share the show on all your social media accounts and websites, or email friends or any family that you know that might be interested in the story. Please also go to YouTube, iTunes, and other places and subscribe to the show. That would be a big help and helps us get the word out as well. Some other ways you can support the show is by signing up for a Patreon account that supports the show directly. If you go to patreon.com/circulate, there's also a support under the support tab on our website. It'll direct you to the Patreon account. Also, there's a PayPal account that people can make one-time donations. And also on our website, there's a apparel that you can purchase under the shop tab. And in general, I just hope you keep coming back and keep listening. Thank you. See you soon.